Alright guys, so we're doing tonight's video in a little bit of a different style. The reason I want to do this is just because I want to do more first-hand videos. Now, this is my bench under my stairs here in my basement. And this is where I diagnose everybody's PC. So this is probably the messiest area of my office. I mean, if you look out here, everything looks pretty well organized. It's fairly nice and decent. But in here, it's gross. And I have Boris down there, my robot lawnmower, along with some garbage. But anyway, so tonight I want to start out by just kind of talking about what I've got here. I've got a customer who brought me a computer today, and the computer does not want to post for him. Doesn't seem like anything's coming up on the screen. He said that when he plugged it into, when he plugged in the HDMI cable to the board, that it seemed to work okay. But that outside of that, it doesn't seem to be functioning. So we're going to see today if that problem is indeed the GPU, as he suspected. And over here, we'll just pick one of these guys to test out in there for him. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take this cover off. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to keep everything in view here for you and keep this well lit. Now you're going to see some things that are going to be in the way. The light, of course, is my magnifying light here, but it's probably the brightest one. So what I'm going to do is I've got the computer plugged in and the HDMI, nothing else, and we're going to go ahead and see if we can get started up, see what happens here. So we're spinning up a little bit. And thus far I'm not getting any signal on the monitors up here, on the single monitor I have up above it. Just blinking. Not getting any sort of easy debug light here that would indicate that anything is actually wrong either. GPU is plugged in. See if those fans are spinning. Those fans are dead, but it looks like the RGB is going, as you can tell right there. So this might be one of those silly situations where all that needs to be done is the GPU needs to be pulled and reseated. So I'm just going to do that real quick, and we'll see if it makes a difference. So to do that, we're just going to go ahead and power off the PC. Wait till all the fans stop spinning. I heard the power supply click, so that's a good sign. Go ahead and just shut it off as well back there. Now you probably just heard some fans kick on. That's just my network switch. Got a managed switch up above here. It runs all my network stuff. Like I said, this is the closet, so it's not glamorous. But let me get out my, let's see. I know my LTD screwdriver is up here somewhere. I think it's wedged kind of behind this guy. This is me trying to clean, shoving stuff where it doesn't fit necessarily. There we go. All right, I'm gonna set this down while I get my screwdriver out. I'm gonna find a better way to hold this camera. Now, one thing I wanted to show you guys that might not be readily apparent to a lot of you is that there is a fair amount of sag with this GPU. Now, I unscrewed it, but it hasn't moved at all. But if you could look at this head on, you can tell there's a bit of an angle to it. That could be putting stress on that PCIe slot up there at the top. So, unfortunately, this looks like it's a micro ATX board. So there's not going to be a whole lot I can do as far as trying another slot on the board goes, but I'm going to, like I said, I'm just going to go ahead and pull it and put it back in here. So 1 second while I do that. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the GPU pulled out and it's just kind of resting here. We'll take a look at that slot up in there. And it looks like it's okay. It doesn't look bent, but visibly, you know, it's always really hard to tell. I had a guy who had a computer in here just last month, and it didn't look bad, but unfortunately the board was totally toast because of that one PCIe slot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and reseat it real nice and firm. We'll wait to hear that click, and I'll actually try and leave you guys in here so you can watch that be reseated. We'll see how well that works out. Phone might actually just drop. There we go. Heard that nice click. So now I don't really want it to sag much, so what I'm going to do is take this initial screw, put that in there, and one of my little prizes for this guy might just be a GPU support bracket, so I can 3D print him one. Got ratcheting action going. Alright, so that's up there pretty solid. We're going to try this one more time. I'm going to plug this HDMI cable into the GPU. See if simply reseating it did the trick here. And power. Oh yeah, I flipped the PSU off. That's. And power. We got fan spinning. Still no GPU fan spinning, and typically I see those spin at the outset. So it's not looking too promising so far. Nothing on our display yet. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Nothing at all. Okay, so my next shot at this is actually just going to be to try swapping out a power supply. Now this is going to get a little ugly, just because the power supply is not something that sits nicely, I guess I'll just say. I've got a power supply unit here that I'm going to try on this guy to just get it going. It's a known good working one that I have here. It's an EVGA power supply, 700 watt. So this is a pre-built, so who knows what kind of power supply is actually in it. But if we can get boot with that GPU on the screen with a new power supply, then that just means that this isn't being supplied enough voltage. So that's what's next. Okay guys, here we go. So nothing fancy. Like I said, it's just an old EVGA power supply that I know works well. It's a 700 watt, so we're going to go ahead and power the power supply up. And so you can kind of see here, if you look real closely, that the power 24-pin connector goes there. We've got our CPU power going there. And then for the GPU, we're running just straight from here, right down here, from this power supply. So I pulled the power cord from the back of that. We're going to go ahead and power it up. We'll see what we get now. So still not seeing any fans on the GPU. Interesting. Still nothing up top either. So it definitely doesn't seem like it's a power supply problem. Even though this probably isn't the best power supply, we're still kind of sitting here at a dead GPU. So I guess let's go from here. Let's try one of my GPUs. I think think we'll go with the 1660 Super here. It's a good quality GPU. Has the HDMI port we need. Let's give it a try. This is my EVGA 1660 Super. We'll do a quick swap and test that out. Okay guys, here we are, keeping all things the same. We're still using my EVGA power supply, which should not have any bearing on what's happening here, just because the results were no different before. But I'm going to go ahead and flip the PSU back on, and then we'll flip on the computer. And those GPU fans are running just fine. Let's see what's going on the screen up here. And we've got graphics. So what that tells me is that this graphics card is no bueno. And unfortunately, it is time to replace the graphics card. Now I'm going to go ahead and swap back to the original power supply. We'll see if we can just reproduce that. But from what I can tell so far, it kind of looks like the MSI card is just no good. Alright guys, here we are, last and final test of this unit here. So I plugged the power supply back in. I still have my 1660 Super in the machine here. We're going to see if we can, I have to swap the power over here, back into the back of this guy. And there we go. Make sure that guy's turned on, which it is. And we'll boot up and see what we get. My guess is going to be we'll be just fine. And we'll get graphics, because it honestly seemed to me like it was the GPU that was the problem. Yep, it certainly was. So, fortunately for him, it's not a bigger issue, so he doesn't have to replace a board or anything like that. And unfortunately for him, it's not just the power supply. So at this point, my recommendation is going to be replacing this 2070 that he's got up here, which, I mean, they were good cards. And a 2070, man, that's, I don't remember the year that those released, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's gotten a fair bit of use out of it. So he said he's had the computer for 4 years so far. So 2020 is when he would have gotten that, which would have been at the height of COVID and the pandemic, when GPUs were hard to get your hands on, when something like this little 1660 Super was going for as much as $300. So anyway, that's it guys. That's this video. So I'm going to go ahead and reach out to this customer with a diagnosis and just let him know, hey, your GPU is dead. And if you like this video, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up down there at the bottom of your screen, and also subscribe. That would be amazing.